invite everyone to have a seat, and I see that most of you have discovered the cookies and the coffee and are availing yourself of the treats. This is a special seminar here in the Tower Center on this bitterly cold day in Dallas, Texas. Someone who lived 8 years in Boston, I just keep thinking about what it might be like if I was still up there. And here comes my colleague Lee. We've saved you a seat right here. Have a seat.
Thank you so much, Chair. Hello.
Come on in. And Lee and others who are coming in, if you want coffee and cookies, this is a pretty informal gathering, so you don't have to just sit still all the time. You can get yourself something to eat or drink.
Okay.
And but in the interest of time, I think we should get started. So I was joking with our guest that I'm not sure I know enough about him to introduce him. And he joked back to me, he said, don't tell them everything, you know. So, but Uwe Hunger is one of the true rising stars in Germany academically. He's a political scientist, like some of us in the room here. And has sitting on, gosh, there's so many different government committees and commissions. I couldn't read them all, especially in German. Come on in, Steve. Find yourself a seat. But he has written on this subject of immigration widely, and is teaching it used to be called the Institute for Politikwissenschaft. I guess it's still the Institute for Political Science at the University of Munster. I first met him when he was just beginning his graduate programs, and have lectured many times in classes and seminars with him as a student. And he is now helping to organize the German Political Science Association in its study of this topic. And most of you know, Germany has come a long way in terms of its thinking about immigration. Even when I first started going there and doing research in the early 1980s, actually 1981, I was working at the Bundesanstalt für Arbeit in Nuremberg. And the refrain in Germany was still, Deutschland ist kein Einwanderungsland. Germany cannot be an immigration country. It can never be an immigration country. But now, as Professor Hunger will show, Germany is very, very much an immigration country, and it has learned to cope with immigration and has moved, as he says here, from ignorance to acceptance. I would just add a couple more things to this. Most of you have been following, I suspect, the recent developments in Germany with this new movement called Pegida, which I'm not going to begin to try to say in German, but it's a long acronym, and I'm sure he'll tell us about that. A movement, basically an anti-Islam movement in Germany. And there have been rumblings of the rise of a new nationalist right in Germany, although compared to the French and many other countries, Germany is still relatively calm with respect to extreme right politics. So Uwe is going to walk us through this landscape, and he has just finished a book, an edited book, I think, on Islam in Europe. So this is another one of his specializations. So we've got lots of things to discuss, lots of territory to cover. So I would like for all of you to just join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Uwe Hunger to Hessen.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Jim, I feel very honored to be here. And since I started my journey to the US, I'm overwhelmed of the hospitality and friendliness of Professor Holyfield and all his colleagues and family, of course. So I'm always so happy and in a way relieved to be here in the United States. So thanks for having me here, and I'm also honored and proud to call me a friend of one of the leading scholars in migration politics and theory in the world, I would say. as you all know, Professor Holyfield is one of the most respected international scholars of migration theory, politics in Europe, in the world, in Germany especially. And so he's also a wonderful mentor for me and for many colleagues of mine. So we all got this good relationship to the United States through you, and I would like to thank you so much for all your help and support and the invitation to SMU today. So
I should say that we're all on our way. Uwe, like many of us, is on our way to the big International Studies Association meeting, which this year is in New Orleans. So he will go from here to New Orleans, and I'll be following him a day later. Professor Takayuchi, others around the room will be attending this meeting. So we'll all be in the Big Easy, which will be a pleasant assignment during Mardi Gras week, I suspect.
And now we're in Big D.
And now we're in Big D. That's right. From Big D to the Big Easy.
Yeah, and the topic I want to talk about immigration in Germany is, as Professor Holyfield pointed out, a very hot topic still in Germany, especially in these days. So the OECD just released a study stating that Germany is the second largest immigration country in the world after the US. Germany has tremendous demographic problems. So it's the second oldest country in the world after Japan, which means that the population is getting older and older, and there are not so many young people. And Germany, or the population of Germany, is more and more aware that Germany relies on immigration very much in the future. And at the same time, there are these new movements, one could say right-wing movements, but also of the middle of the society, these anti-Islam demonstrations in many cities in Germany. So we have a very difficult situation right now, but there's also some counter powers to promote immigration, because there's no doubt that Germany has always been a country of immigration and will be and has to be a country of immigration. So my presentation is I will try to show some faces in this process, and I choose the words from ignorance to acceptance with a question mark. So I'm not sure whether we are already in this stage of acceptance, but I think this might be the end of the road also for Germany. And I picked a theoretical model to explain this journey from ignorance to acceptance, which is not a political science model, but I borrowed it from the psychology. So some of you just met my wife. She's a psychologist, and every evening we come home from our work, so we have discussions at the kitchen table. So, and we not only just talk about high politics and world politics, but also we discuss psychologist issues. And at least when you work at a German university, there are a lot of psychological issues in the evening you have to discuss. And I learned some models and theories, and one I picked reminded me so much to the history of immigration that I tried to use it as an illustration to show the development of the country of immigration in Germany. And it's a serious model, and I think many of you know this model. It's a model of coping with difficult situations in life, how individuals deal with difficult situations in their lives, and it reminds me in a way that also Germany copes in this way with immigration. So I say this before because I always present this model with a smile. So it's not a political science model, it's a psychologist model. And it has 5 phases. Phase 1, and then I was very aware of it, it's ignorance. And Jim already said it, this was a saying, the mantra in Germany over decades: Germany is not an immigration country. And this was true from the very beginning in the 1950s, when the first guest worker contracts were signed with Italy, Turkey and other southern European countries. The basic idea was a temporary labor migration, and it's important that it was temporary.
Yeah.
And it was just for labor. And there's a famous saying of Max Frisch, we called for workers and human beings came. And
how do you say it in German?
Wir riefen Arbeitskräfte und Menschen kamen. So, and one result was that we didn't have, I would say, any integration policies or any measures to help these immigrants to integrate into the society. And one, if I tell it my students in Germany, which are 20 years younger than I am, they can't believe the story. One of the consequences of this idea of not being a country of immigration was that the German school system created special classes for immigrants. The so-called Ausländerklassen, classes for foreigners only. So this means if you came from Turkey, or your parents came from Turkey to Germany, you were from Turkish descendant, so you had to be in a Turkish class at a German school. And these schools were mostly at the bottom of the school hierarchy, and this was true until the 1990s. So almost 40 years after the first organized immigration, still the children of these immigrant workers were educated in special classes in Germany, and the official laws, school laws, stated that we maintain these special classes for this reason, because if so, this is the only way these children will maintain their ability to return, even in the 1990s. And this was the idea that Germany is not an immigration country, and you can see these kind of politics in many fields. For example, also in politics, so there were high hurdles to getting the German citizenship until the end of the 1990s. It took 8 to 12 years being a regular immigrant resident in Germany to get the German citizenship, for example. So most of these immigrants coming as guest workers, later as refugees to Germany, were not allowed to vote and to participate in the German political system, and there were, like in the education system, special councils for foreigners in the communities. And this is still the basic idea of not being an immigration country, and I took one cartoon here, so this is, I don't know the English in ostrich, so
no
it's for the Strauss who doesn't want to see here anything about immigration. But maybe I go one slide before. There was an inclusion into the German welfare state system, and also an incorporation of the German unions and working councils. And this was one important step in the immigration process because even though the immigrant workers had the lowest jobs in the hierarchy, they were still included in the social security system. So they got health insurance, pensions, and so on. And this was the reason why later on these immigrants were eligible to stay in Germany and have these benefits. Yeah.
Other than Southern Europe, why or how did it come about that most of the early immigrants came from Eastern Turkey rather than from some of the other Islamic countries?
Yeah, Germany had some contracts with different countries, and they chose, among others, Turkey. And they were looking for not for skilled workers, but unskilled workers for the industry. And Turkey could deliver that.
Yeah.
And so this is another important element of the immigration country of Germany, that many of these migrant workers were more or less unskilled or not that qualified. And their children, as I said, weren't qualified in Germany at the beginning, and it's still true until today. Phase 2 in this model I'm referring to is aggression, anxiety. So we have a new situation in our lives. The first reaction is ignorance. We don't want to hear about it. The second is we get some emotions and we get aggressive and have anxiety. And you can see this, all these indicators within the German society. So over decades they didn't want to hear about immigration, and as I said, it was still true until the 1990s, and some of my fellow citizens still say today we are not a country of immigration, but I came later on back, and you can see all this worry. So there was in the 80s this slogan, "The boat is full" in Germany. There have been many attacks against foreigners in many German cities in the 80s and the 90s, and even until today with this murders of NSU, the National Union, who attacked Turkish citizens within the last years. And also an indicator is an exaggerated reactions to small changes, and I would say that the Kida, this anti-Islam movement, could be interpreted like this, and you can see this, and I have a photo of this demonstration, and there are thousands of people on the street right now, but mostly, this is interesting, in Eastern Germany, where almost no immigrants live, so they have a portion of immigration below 1% in many areas, and there the anxiety and the aggression against immigration is the biggest. On the other side, you have big counter demonstrations, pro-immigration and multicultural, open Germany, and those parts in Germany where most immigrants live. So I would interpret this as a form of anxiety and aggression towards a new situation in Eastern Germany. And as I said in the beginning, Germany has tremendous demographic problems and rely on immigration in the future, and especially in Eastern Germany. So this is a kind of aggressive reaction on this development which will come.
Bill, I have a question. You've heard, and everybody in this room knows, that the United States has always called itself a nation of immigrants. And you probably also know that calling ourselves a nation of immigrants doesn't mean that we're friendly to immigrants. In fact, from 1790 naturalization law right up to the present, we have been, immigrant and feindlich. We've been hostile to immigrants. And they have to go through sort of a gauntlet process to become mainstream Americans, whether you're Irish or German or French or Jewish. And in your model up there, the examples that you're given here are violence against immigrants, but there doesn't seem to be any room for actually using the word that we use in the United States, which is, in German, I guess you would call it Rassenhasse, right? Something like this, right? Which I think is what we would call racism. So when you say Germany for the Germans, it's not just saying we don't want immigrants here. It's, to me, psychologically deeper than that. It's we don't want people here who will cause the decline of Germany or the Germans to become less than what they are. That somehow bringing in immigrants and mixing them in with the German blood and German culture will cause Germany, as we know it today, to disappear.
Yes.
What was the title of the book by Thilo Salzam? You're probably going to show it later on, I guess.
This is the next stage.
This is the next stage.
It's the next
stage. Okay.
So this stage is anxiety, aggression, and it would be a normal human reaction to a new situation. And the next phase would be depression. so it's also in Eastern Germany. I would guess it's getting worse. It's abolishment of Germany. And this,
there we go.
Exactly, this is the book title, and it was a bestseller in Germany just 4 years ago. Deutschland schafft sich ab. So, I don't know, Germany
doing away with itself. Germany is doing away with it. It's destroying itself.
And this was exactly the argument, and so it disappears.
And the guy who wrote this book was a central banker, right? He worked at the Bundesbank.
Yeah. And also a social democrat, so he was not a right-wing activist or so. And this book was sold millions of it. So this was the main source the German population learned about immigration, that it was not very scientific. So it was just
English heritage people.
Just crap. There was a question.
I was wondering if you seem not to differentiate between the traditions that have been established in Eastern Germany versus West Germany, and the Pegida movement is, although there are some presumably people from West Germany, but it is, I think, not an accident that it is in Dresden and Leipzig, right? So I wonder if this model maybe erases some of these historical, even or political traditions out of which the population kind of reacts to immigration.
I would answer in this way, that I would interpret it like, so Eastern Germany is just, or some parts of Eastern Germany are only in phase 2 right now. So and we had also the phase 1 in Eastern Germany. So they said there was no immigration into the GDR, and we don't have immigration there, but there was immigration. And so they, this is what struck me, they ignored it, basically. So there is no immigration in the GDR.
And these were people that the East German government brought from other communist countries, especially Vietnam.
Vietnam, for example. And they lived like in Western Germany at the periphery of the cities and the working places and so on. And my interpretation is, again, with a little smile, so this is phase 2 in Eastern Germany, and I would say that Western Germany is a little bit further now, and I come to this stages later, but I would say, we have to expect depression in Eastern Germany as well, so it's getting worse there.
kind of in the same light that was just mentioned now. I actually lived there from 86 to 92. And although the fact that I lived there doesn't mean that I was completely conscious of what was going on, especially because I was a teenager, but
Where did you live?
Part.
Where did you live?
Lüneburg, Adendorf, so North Germany, Niedersachsen.
Okay.
And in that specific case, I don't remember seeing, not even with colleagues or friends which were from other places, Ausländerklassen or Ausländerschulen, that kind of thing, for foreigners. And I'm talking about the Western part, so I'm kind of questioning myself, maybe some of this, is it more economical than anything else? Because the people who came from the DDR, the moment that the wall fell down, they were not really prepared to compete in the same sense. You're coming from a communistic environment, and the other one is a capitalistic and sozialkapitalistisch, and in that sense, that angst, that anxiety that you're talking about, isn't that more an economic reaction than an ethnic or a racial or anything like that? Because that's how we felt it at that time, that they're just feeling unprepared or underprepared. I remember that my friends, they had straight A's. And in Germany, and in West Germany, it's really hard to get the straight A thing. And there they had the grades were different, the working, the competition.
I mean, the striking thing with this Pegida movement in Eastern Germany is that it's against Islam. Islamisierung, what?
Islamification
Islamification
of Deutschland, of Germany, yes.
Of Germany, and so there are almost no Muslim people there. So I think it's an irrational anxiety, and of course economic conditions play a role, but the target are immigrants in this case. Again, and the second thing, you haven't seen Ausländerklassen, a special class for foreigners in
Or Schulen or whatever.
in Lower Saxony, and so they disappeared in the 80s, piece by piece. And I think Lower Saxony was one of the first states in Germany.
Okay.
Which,
I got like
but in Bavaria, for example, it was until the mid-1990s. So 40% of the foreign-born students were in these special classes. And as I said, they were not taught totally in German, but partly in Turkish and American, etc. And this has some consequences, of course, for the chances for the labor market, etc. Yeah. So that was.
I think it's a follow-up. I mean, I had a question about your model, in the sense that are you trying to understand, using the model, developments after World War II, or would there be relevance for the Third Reich, emergence of the Third Reich, for example? So I think at some level I would see this as a simplification, but I will just pose it, that the anti-Islamic movement or anti-Islamic feeling parallels anti-Semitic feelings about 100 years ago or so. I mean, I know that's not a very exact parallel, but so it's a question in part theoretically about your model, but also about what is happening and how we should understand it.
Yeah, so I just applied it for the case of post-World War II Germany. So it reminds me, and I see some parallels, and I use it as an illustration to explain the development in Germany, and you can see some elements of it. But I would be interested maybe to hear, can you see some parallels in the United States, for example? So is there such a kind of development so that you have these different stages? And so, for example, the stage 1, ignorance, it was so strong in Germany. You can't explain it, or you can't. I didn't could. So it's just this maybe gives the key.
Just one thing about the U.S. I think it depends on where in the U.S. you're talking about and when. But for example, in New York in the 19th century, you had the political machines that viewed the immigrants as a source of votes.
That's how the Irish.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. And so when you look at the Northeast, it's maybe specifically New York, but maybe other regions in the Northeast, immigration was, I don't know if it's exactly assimilationism. It was more bodies, more votes. You know, we can maintain our power this way. I think it was the Democratic Party at that time. But.
I was going to riff off of something that was said about the East and West Germans, you know, the division. When I taught at the Humboldt Universität for a year in Berlin, there wasn't the sense in 2000, right? So this is 10 years, you know, after the fall of the wall, basically. And the tension wasn't about the non-Germans who were attending university, you know, second, third generation. Turks, for example, and others. The tension was between the Wessis and the Ossis, East and West Germans. And the West Germans pretty much, in some cases, I thought, despised the Ossis more than they did the immigrants. You know, so it wasn't just us Germans versus non-Germans. It was the sense that reunification may have been wonderful for the United States and West Berlin and West Germany at some level, but at another level, there was this: do we really want to integrate with those people?
Yeah,
kind of like inferior Germans. Do you know what I mean?
Groups. Yeah.
You know, they were the inferior Germans. And if you want to look at a parallel to the United States, it's like if you think of white supremacy as the equivalent of Aryanism, right?
Yeah.
Which it is. You have to factor in how a certain large segment of the American population that we sometimes pejoratively allude to as white trash, or poor whites, okay? And the way we realize how they could exist, even though we were the master race, is because we had eugenic science to tell us that they were genetically defective whites. And I think at the cultural level, my sense in Germany was that, you know, they didn't think that the East Germans were somehow genetically inferior. It was they were culturally inferior, and they're actually
They weren't Western.
They weren't Western, right? Exactly. They weren't Western enough.
Slavophiles.
Yes, and so they represented economic threat, cultural threats, psychological threats, whatever. It's just interesting, you know, that you have these concentric circles of Germanness, with, you know, sort of West Germany at the core, and even, you know, parts of Germany, West Germany, are sort of, you know, on the periphery of that core, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Well, let's let him finish the presentation. We were lost the train here.
Well, I have one question on the type of immigration, and that is, are you talking about, I thought Germany had a program of sort of a work program. People come over for a certain number of years, but they would never become citizens, which is some idea that we're banning around in the U.S. now. Is that not the case? Are we talking about people who after 12 years can become citizens? What is the immigration policy in Germany?
Right now?
Well, now.
Yeah. Okay, but in the past it was this idea of a rotation. And they should come for 2 years and then go back. But this didn't work out. One reason was that the employer said, we want these workers because they know how to deal with our company and so on. And then they stayed. But the politician ignored this reality. Today, and maybe it's a good idea to go further.
Go further in
my
the
presentation. The situation is different because the needs of the economy are different. So Germany is looking more for highly skilled workers, and they don't see the integration problems, which are to a large extent homemade with these high-skilled workers. But I come within the next slide. So, but you had also...
Yeah, I just want to say it seems to me like that the conflict focuses around cultural discomfort, and that kind of goes down to a mistaken idea of self-importance. Like, we're really comfortable in our culture, and it would be like in a Lutheran church if you see a couple of guys walking in yarmulkes, and you think, oh, okay, there's a couple of guys in yarmulkes. Well, a couple of weekends later, if there's 100 guys in yarmulkes, and then all of a sudden you've got one guy in the yarmulke that's on the deacons group. I don't know what you call them in Lutheran church. So it's that anxiety that, oh my gosh, we're going to have to change because they're growing and they're going to overtake.
And the next stage after the anxiety is depression. So you get depressed by the situation and you think that you can't handle it. So it's over. This is the basic idea, and this happened in Germany again with this book. So this is the symbol of this phase. Germany abolishes itself, so there's no future for Germany. But then there's the next stage. Negotiation.
There we go.
So, and I would say Germany is in this phase now. So it's not in the phase of acceptance, and so we came over of the depression, I would say, Western Germany, and so now it's a phase of negotiation. And the slogan now is not Germany is an immigration country, but Germany is an integration. So there's an acceptance of the idea that we had immigration and this immigrant state, but they should integrate or have to integrate.
Sound familiar, Neil?
And, so this is the deal. So we have deals now. So your children, they want to have better education, okay, but then you have to make sure that they learn German at home, in your family, for example. There's this discussion. Another discussion is, okay, you want to have your family from your country of origin to come to Germany, then they have to learn German in this country. Then we make this deal. So there's, I would say, not a sense of acceptance of being a country of immigration, but we are in the phase of negotiation. And for example, speaking of Islam in Germany, so over decades the Muslim population in Germany was ignored. So there were mosques in some hidden areas in the city, but nobody recognized them. And since I think 2008, we have the so-called Islam conference. So it's the state invited Muslim organizations to come together and to discuss the issues of religion, education, etc. In Germany to negotiate the integration process. And my interpretation is that the new situation which brought us in this stage is a new demographic change I mentioned in the beginning, and the lack of qualified workers. So I'm just started a new job at the University of Siegen, which is an economically powerhouse of Germany, but not a big city. So, and the people leave this region, and they look for workers there. They can't find workers in Germany. So the unemployment rate is very low, and they can't find people, and they rely on immigration, and they have to organize it. And as I said before, so there's a strong lobby, economic lobby in Germany, promoting immigration, and so they
so who is the Bill Gates of Germany, I wonder?
We have no Bill Gates, but there's a new expert council in German, the Sachverständigenrat. Normally it's an expert council sponsored by the state, but in this case there's an expert council for immigration sponsored by private economic foundations. So there's a strong movement to convince the population that immigration is a good thing for Germany. And for example, these regions where now I work now, the Siegerland, they lose 20% of their population within the next 20 years, and even more young people. So in 5 years, there will be more people retiring than students leave schools, and so they need immigration. That's a fact. Yeah.
Can I ask you two quick questions? One, when you say qualified, do you mean all across the skill levels? Because in the U.S. we talk much about skilled immigration. Is it across all levels, or how do you determine?
Yeah.
I guess what do you mean by
It's
qualified?
computer engineers,
Yeah.
for example, construction engineers, but also qualified workers for the industry, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So manufacturing. Or,
Right.
Or just even service.
Yeah, nurses, for example. So the Siegerland I work now, they rely on Polish nurses. So if they won't come, the whole system would collapse. That's true.
I know you said earlier that Germany is the third oldest demographically, but how does the situation differ, for example, from Italy or from? I know there's a lot of Bangladeshi immigrants, for example, into Italy. So how is Germany unique within Europe on this issue?
Yeah, it's. I would say it's not unique. So almost all European countries struggle with this demographic problem. That's, for example, why. So the new immigration can't come from Europe, because all countries have the same problems in 10 years. So we have to reach out further, Asia, Latin America, etc. I think Jim knows better. The only country is France, which has a positive.
They are above replacement level, the
Yeah.
French, but only thanks to immigration.
You're talking about the fertility rate. The
Yeah,
birth rate.
fertility rates. Yeah, and the French have been obsessed, with this issue for 150
They
years.
have positive social
So
programs
they've been
happening
working on this for a
there.
long time. The demographic transition in France occurred in the early 19th century. So France, population stagnated. At the same time, Germany and Britain and other countries were growing very fast. Their population stagnated. So the French have been acutely aware of this for a long time. And you get into the late 19th and early 20th century when France really started to go into an industrial revolution. And the French had to, what I've said, they had to invent a working class. Because the French peasants, the farmers, wouldn't leave the countryside. They had very, very small families. They stayed on the farms. So the result is that the French working class were Italians, they were Poles, and eventually, of course, they came from North Africa and elsewhere. So the French have a much longer and older history of wrestling with this issue.
Would you care to hazard a guess why Germany has such a high, I should say, such a low birth rate on a par practically with Japan?
I mean, it has many reasons. One is that it's a school system. We have this half-day school system in Germany. So the kids come back from school at
1
2
o'clock,
p.m.
2
or
o'clock,
something.
yeah.
And they need a father or mother to taken care of.
But of course, in East Germany, before, they had what was called Hort.
Yeah.
And so West Germany doesn't want to do that, does it? Or the Western culture
it
of
comes
that
more and more.
doesn't believe in
Yeah.
that. Hort was when you got out of school at 2 o'clock, you stayed at the school ground, and you switched over to basically, I wouldn't call it childcare because it's more like, it goes up through the 5th grade. And it was more school, like after school. They did their homework, they played out in the playground. They did away with that after reunification.
Yeah. So all these companies and employers invest much money in facilities to in these horts, so to carrying facilities for the kids.
Yeah, just to go back to the French example, the French have had in place for going back to the 20s, the system they called allocation familiale, which is heavy subsidies for having children. And the French have also had a very long, highly developed daycare after-school system. So, and that's been consistent throughout much of the 20th century to try to promote the family and encourage people to have children. So, and France is one of the only countries, I think, that has such a highly developed system. And, just to as more evidence of what he was saying, I brought up the same question with some other Germans here in Dallas in their 40s, And I hate to put it so bluntly, but I was thinking of my colleague, his wife Antje, who's here, no children. So unfortunately, you're typical of your generation, not having children. And the response was, well, it has to do with this crazy, system where they can't really get, help, for to as professional couples to have. But in the United States, I don't know if it is dramatically different. I mean, we could probably go around this room
Except
and
the
talk.
school day is longer.
Yeah, a school day's longer here. Yeah, but anyway, this demographic
Once you
issue
reach a
is,
certain age, once you reach the first grade and second.
But the United States has the same demographic issue for the indigenous, shall we say, in quotation mark population, those who are non-immigrants. I mean, if there would be no immigration in the United States, it would be
That's right.
flat.
It's the same is true for
Immigration
Germany,
is
by
saved
the way.
us too.
So,
And of
without
course-
this immigration, it would be worse.
of course,
Right.
the worst society of all we have yet to hear from.
Is Japan.
Sitting right here.
Not to find a point on this, but I think that we're talking about the social incentives for having children, school days, and all of that. But 20 years ago, I was living in Germany for a number of years. I was admittedly in a southern sort of conservative region, Esslingen am Neckar, and we were looking on the newspaper for a place to live, and one of my German friends said, "Oh, you won't have any problem. You don't have any children." And so I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's just harder to get a place if you have kids. They don't like kids." And so the expression is, kindfeindlich, hostility to kids. So my first experience of that was when we did have a child, and we went to a restaurant. A person came, and this was like at 7:30 at a Gasthaus. He said, "Take your child home and put your children to bed. They don't belong out right now." Meanwhile, the same person who said that's bringing out a bowl of bones for the people who bring their Schäferhunde to. It's a very dog-friendly culture, right? They don't kind of like kids so much. What do you say to that, Uwe?
I say let's finish the presentation.
What's the next phase?
Which part of Germany was it?
Uwe, go back to the slide. Let's finish the presentation.
What kind of dog was it?
Let's finish the presentation. Then we'll,
Okay. Maybe one point, as I said before, I think we are in this negotiation phase. So, and this is a significant change compared to the times before. So we accept that immigrants are in the country and they have to have the same chances if possible, but there's always a but. But then they have to learn German, but then they have to do this and that. As I said before, the new situation is a demographic change, and the problem is the global war on talents, and also the bad image of Germany in some parts of the world with regard to immigration and friendliness of the people. And so one element of this new strategy to becoming an attractive immigration country is the introduction of these welcome centers. And so Willkommenskultur, do you know this expression?
This is before my time. I was noticing that's very interesting.
3 or 4 years old now, this expression. It's a welcome culture, to establish a welcome culture in Germany. And this shows how deep the pressure for immigration in Germany is. And like many things in Germany, so it's comes from the state. And so they implement it on the local level, and there are some welcome centers in Hamburg, for example, and Cottbus, so even in Eastern Germany, because they depend on immigration very much. And this is a picture of the idea of the new immigration to Germany. This was your question. Skilled workers, high-skilled workers who can bring new dynamics to the economy and bring money and context to the German economy. But this is not the end of this model. The last phase is acceptance, and this would mean that Germany actually is an immigration country. Nobody says this of the official politicians right now. It's still, yes, integration, yes. Immigration, under certain circumstances we can agree with it. And what would this acceptance be? I would say we would need a new thinking, which means acceptance of the migration reality in Germany, and not just the ones who are already in Germany. I think a new balance, and this would mean an awareness of positive and negative effects of immigration, so a realistic view on it. So we have very often very extreme positions. So immigration is bad, or it's the solution for everything, but it's not balanced right now, and I think you can observe this. And the last point would be a new self-confidence. And I put it with a question mark, Germany as a nation of immigrants. So, and we talked about this notion of Germany as a Kulturnation, cultural nation, which is changing, of course, and we are a nation of immigrants right now. We haven't accepted it, and you can see it here. It's not very good, but last year the German soccer team won the World Cup, and if you look on the team, 50% of the players had a migration history. So, and this was a symbol of the new Germany. And this also shows that so Germany has made some steps, but I wouldn't say that's in the end of this circle. So we are about to enter the next stage of acceptance. We are still in this phase of negotiation. Under which conditions can we accept that we are a country of immigration? I would like to end at this point. Okay. I have some points for discussion now, and I thank you for your attention. Vielen Dank. And always remember, I just picked up this at the kitchen table. So, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we've had already an intense discussion, but I want to do a little more organized and give people a chance to put questions on the table. And I don't know, should we collect a couple of questions maybe? Let's take a round of questions and then we'll come back to him. So first Sandy, and then Lai, and then Robert, and then we'll stop with those three, and then we'll come back and take another round. So Sandy first.
Actually, if you don't mind, may I go first? Because I got to run.
Oh, you got to go. Oh, that's true. You've got family obligations. Someone with children.
We have the same child care issues here. So just a very quick question. I'm curious about what are the factors that would move Germany from one phase to the next? Is it crisis? Is it lobbying by business groups, say? I mean, what's the motivating factor?
Okay, well, you got to answer her question, so she has to leave. Let's answer the question.
I would say one factor is definitely time. So you need some time to adjust and to realize, and I think one could discuss if you have to go through these phases to get to this exception stage. Another factor, of course, are crisis or pressure. So if we wouldn't have these much demographic pressure in Germany, it would have been taken much more time to get in the next stage of negotiation.
Okay, well, are you satisfied with that answer?
Well, I'm just curious. No, I'm just curious to know. Is it possible using this theory?
Yeah.
Is it possible to get stuck in a phase? So your optimism, I wonder if maybe it's not warranted. And I'm also wondering, does the shift from Southern European immigrants to Muslim immigrants, did that, also affect movement from one phase to another?
Referring to this model, I think you will end up with acceptance. But you can fall back to other stages, and some people are not that far than other people, and some will stuck in depression, for example. But I think at the whole, I would say that every country, every society will accept immigration in the long run. And it's again, time is a big factor. So the younger people now in Germany, they grew up in a multicultural society, so they know that their fellow students come from other countries, and it's normal, and they learn it. So, but I think the problem is if you don't have these experiences with immigration, so it can produce fears and so on.
At some point, I want to go back to Neil Foley, because I know he's just itching there to say, look at the United States and all the phases that we've had in this country. And I have 1,000 questions, but
Actually, I'm thinking of the 5 stages of death.
5 stages.
The grieving process, all the way up to acceptance.
Well,
you have to go through them, right?
Professor Leong has to leave to take care of her 2 small
She can
children.
tell you about the graduate students in Singapore.
Yeah, and he's teaching her class in the morning, actually, which is on the politics of Islam. But Sandy Thatcher, you have a question. Sandy.
My question actually was partially an answer to hers, and that has to do with the rate of intermarriage, different cultural groups, and you're talking about change over time. Well, that certainly could dramatically affect the acceptance of that through that kind of social phenomenon. It's certainly happening in this country.
Sure.
And so what is the rate of intermarriage among different cultural groups?
Before you answer that, let's take Robert's question, and we'll get those 2 on the table, and then we'll come back.
It's slightly different. It seems that all the European nations, but Germany in particular, were born in their modern forms out of a certain idea of ethnic identity associated with the state. And
the French would say not, but
the French would say not. Yes. But it seems like that kind of identity in which ethnicity and culture, or culture only with the nation state itself, is part of phase 5. Everybody can integrate into our culture. Phase 4, phase 5 that you described really requires people to have a different idea of what it means to be in a nation state, and also may require that they have a quite significantly different idea of what it means to be a human being. And I'd just be curious whether you see that's something that can happen.
Yeah, the French sociologist Ernst Renan, I don't know if any of you know this quote, but he had a great quote which you can remember. He said, "A nation is a daily referendum." So, nations change from day to day, and it's a constant referendum, something that's constantly being changed and constantly in flux. So do you want to answer those, and then we'll take Lee Cullum's question and others. So go ahead.
The first question was about intermarriage, right? And there's a big variety towards different groups of immigrants. And this is nothing new, but the bigger immigrant group, the smaller the intermarriage rate in Germany, for example. With the Turkish immigrants, but you have smaller groups, for example, Spaniards. So the group of Spanish immigrants almost disappeared in Germany by intermarriage. And so this is a typical form of integration, if you want. But I would say so the segregation, the ethnic segregation is not that strong in Germany, and I would say this has something to do with one of the challenges to get into the stage, and I would say the German welfare state. So this means that, as I explained before, so every immigrant who came to Germany had the same welfare rights.
Yeah.
So
that was negotiated up front by the German trade unions.
Yeah, right.
Who said we don't want people coming in with rights in the workplace that Germans they wanted to be equal. So starting in the same place, and that would be very different than what you see, I think, in the U.S., for example. So it's an emphasis on the welfare state, as the key element of the social contract.
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah. So, do you want to take Robert's question?
Yeah, I think this is exactly the point. So, what is our idea, image of being a nation.
Right.
So, and this question of cultural nation. And I put this in this slide, so the new self-confidence. So I think Germany would have to accept that also Germany is a nation of immigrants. And again, you can see it in this picture. It's not very good, but so this is an icon of the nation, the national football team, and it was accepted that more than 50% came from other countries, or the parents were born or whatever, but it was no issue, no big issue. Some issues, so do they sing the national anthem and so on? Shouldn't they do that again? This is not acceptance exactly, but I think this is the key question: what kind of nation?
Well, I think sport is a key way to integrate any subpopulation. Like one could only think about African Americans in the United States, for example, just as a footnote. But Lee Cullum, you have a question.
Thank you. Dr. Unger, thank you for a fascinating presentation. Several years ago, I chanced to meet one of your economists named Kurt Lauk, who had been with some of the automobile companies, and one of them in Bavaria, was an advisor to the CDU, maybe still is. And at that time, he was very concerned about the demographic problem, which we began today discussing. And he said the average age in Germany, France, Italy was 47, 48, 49, whereas in the U.S. it was 35. Those figures may have changed by now. But he said then it would take 500,000 people a year immigrating to Germany to catch up. That hasn't happened. Is there any chance of reaching numbers like that?
Yeah, and even if we would have 500,000 immigrants a year, it wouldn't stabilize the population. So I don't think that such a big number is realistic.
Neither did he.
For example, even with the global competition for immigrants, for example. But at least I would guess maybe 300,000 a year is realistic to have. And we have to prepare also the population for this. So it will change our notion of a nation. So and you have to get the people in this process.
How many are you taking now? How many are coming now?
I'm not sure. I think it was more than 200,000, 250,000.
Compared to the U.S., which is about 1 million a year. Yes. So they're taking, which for a country the size of Germany, that's still pretty significant. But we're all far behind the Canadians and the Australians who take many more as a percentage. So I do want to get everybody a chance to speak. So we'll take a round of questions. I think Shuba had a question, Brandon, Peter. But let's start with Shuba. Make your questions quick.
I'll be very quick. I mean, when I try to generalize this, there seems to be a phase 6 as well, which is majority-minority. I mean, this is the phase in the U.S. and Canada, maybe in Australia. I find that concept especially interesting, and I think you touched upon this. In Europe, I mean, we've talked about Germany, but we're not supposed to talk about nations anymore. I thought it's the European Union. So I'm joking. But it's interesting to see how that plays out, because maybe the whole notion of Europe itself may not.
So the role of Europe. Peter, you want to get that in?
My question exactly. The role of Europe.
The role of Europe.
How does it fit into a specific focus on Germany?
Okay, so
when you talk about immigration, there are outside Europe, internal to Europe.
So let's keep getting questions on the table. Brandon?
That was mine as well.
Three Europe questions. How about you?
We tend to think that the situation in Germany is sort of like in the United States, only we are a little behind. But the role of the churches is a different one in Germany than in the United States. I'm always surprised living in the United States now how public the churches are in Germany and what kind of moral weight they have. And I think this is now also maybe happening with the various Muslim organizations that are implemented, including at the universities where we have departments of Islam studies and so on. But I want to stay with the churches for sort of like historical reasons. And I wonder how you think that the churches in Germany, all kinds of types, but basically two, right? The Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. What role they are playing in this coping mechanism.
Okay, so Europe and the Church. I want to take one more question from June Pion, and then we'll stop and get answers. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question about, I think now for our generations, we're talking about, when we talk about the immigration, you talked about highly skilled immigrants, right? So now these days, states are in the market, right? States, they're all in the market. From the highly skilled immigrant's point of view, we have so many options to go, right? So is Germany really attractive? So now the countries need to think about from the state point that are we really attractive to these highly skilled immigrants? I mean, they have United States, Canada, and all other options. Why we need to choose Germany? Does Germany really consider this?
So the Germans, how are you selling yourself to all these high-skilled immigrants? So let's take Europe, the Church, and Germany as an attractive place to go. So you want to take those questions?
Okay, thank you. The role of Europe. My understanding is that this discussion of immigration and integration in Europe is still a discussion of nation states.
Okay.
So it's always Germany, and Germany also competes with France and UK, especially UK, on this skilled labor, for example. And you can see this with the enlargement of the European Union, the Eastern enlargement, so Romania, Bucharest, Poland, etc. So Germany was, with Austria, the only countries which didn't open up the borders for labor migrants. And I think this was kind of a phase 3. No, it was okay. I can't hear indecision of action, so they couldn't
bring themselves to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So and there was still a fear for. I looked for loss of control. This was one element.
Yeah.
So and they wanted to control the labor market. And there was just a fear to have new laborers from Eastern Europe, and now the borders are open and nothing happened. So it wasn't that big deal, like in the UK, etc. And so sorry, I missed this joke. Again, to this demographic point, so the discussion is that we need immigration from outside Europe. And so we have this European blue card, have you heard of it? This mechanism of attracting highly skilled workers from all over the world to Europe. But also this blue card is a national thing. So only in Germany, it has some relevance, but not much. But in all other European countries, it doesn't have any relevance. So they introduce it, but the hurdles are so high that nobody would come through this scheme. So I think it's still a nation-state issue, immigration, but they try to push the European dimension. And also they try to push this new idea of a nation, as a European nation. So the new generation will grow up with a sense of being a European. And for example, this Pegida movement, Pegida stands for Patriotic Europeans Against Islamification, of the Western world. So it's the new idea of Europeans, but I think it's.
Excuse me, could you explain further why the blue card didn't work? That's very interesting.
Well, then you had the German green card also that didn't work, which was not a green card, but what the Germans wanted was an H-1B type system, right?
Yeah, right. It was,
but it didn't work. So
but the states wouldn't accept the blue?
Yeah. So as much I understood it in other European countries, they didn't want to have this scheme, and they just
Said no.
In a very cold way, they put the hurdle so high that no one would
I
come.
see.
But this brings me to your question. It's also a question of image, and so how attractive Germany is as an immigration country. And this reminds me to an anecdote when I was in California doing a study.
He spent a year in Southern California.
Yeah, thanks to Jim. And I did a study on Indian computer entrepreneurs in Southern California, and I was invited, and it was 10 years ago, invited for a reception of Indian entrepreneurs in Southern California, in San Diego and in Los Angeles. And it was the time that there was a campaign in Germany, not on the federal level, but on the state level.
Kinderstadt Inde.
Kinderstadt Inde. So, what is it? Children instead of Indians.
Yeah, we need to focus on our children, not on Indians. That was the motto.
This was a slogan. And the people asked me, so on the other side of the globe, what happened in Germany? There's a crazy campaign, better dead than Indian. So, and this was a effect of the state campaign. But this damages the image of Germany tremendously. And also, I think this demonstrations now in Pegida and so on, this is very...
So Germany doesn't have a welcoming image, in spite of its welcome center.
Yeah, they try to implement it now, but you need more than a center which helps you with the paperwork. And I think this is one explanation why it didn't work so well. And I think another point is language, of course. So it's difficult to learn language, but on the other hand, and this brings me to this point of a welfare state. So a welfare state is a good thing if you don't have a job, then you get some money from the state on the one hand. On the other hand, if you get some money from the state, everybody wants to know what you do with your money. And you don't have such a private liberty such in the air. So it's not your business if you learn German or not. So you have to learn German because you are also hired to get a job if you can German. So the public wants that you learn German. And so there's more pressure on the immigrants from my perspective than, for example, in the United States. And this is maybe a problem for the immigrants, and they don't want to be such approached by the public. Be so and so on.
Let's take one more round of questions.
The church.
Oh, the church. We forgot about the church. That's right. Absolutely critical. Religion and the church.
Yeah, of course, the churches play a specific, significant role in the German public. So there's a special treaty between the state and the churches. And
how many of you are coming from the Perkins School of Theology in here? 1, 2, 3. So we got quite a few coming from our theology school. So that's at least an indication. They think the church and religion are important.
Yeah, and
we all do. We all do.
They have played a big role in the integration process of many immigrants in Germany. For example, in the assistance of the daily work, daily problems of the immigrants. So, and the state transferred many obligations and services to the Caritas, for example, to the churches, and the churches are, I would say, an advocate pro-immigration in Germany, and also the counter demonstrations against Pegida. They are also highly influenced by the church.
So the irony is that the pro-immigration demonstrations are being organized by the German churches.
Not organized, but I think from some religious people are also in the demonstration, and so on. But it's a broad movement in Western Germany, and I think it plays an important, crucial role in advocating pro-immigration, especially in the asylum.
How would you
field.
compare the Catholic versus the Lutheran?
Oh, that's a tricky question. So I think that I don't see so many differences in these churches. So I think they're pretty much have pretty much the same approach towards immigration. There was a division of labor in the beginning of the immigration to Germany. So some immigrants, Catholic immigrants, were covered by the Catholic Church, and Protestant immigrants or other immigrants were covered by the Protestant Church in terms of services and social help and so on.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a stronger international advocate that I can think of than the Roman Catholic Church for immigrants. I mean, it is just rock solid when it comes to this question. No question about it. I just addressed the Conference of Catholic Bishops in the United States, and to be with a group of very devout and intense Roman Catholics, and there's no question where they are on the immigration issue. And I think that would probably be true. Yeah. So, but let's take another quick round of questions. I'm going to sort of go to the back and come front. So let's take this lady right here first, since you didn't ask. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Oh, I'm Bebe. I'm from anthropology. I'm a PhD candidate, and my research is about Chinese migrants' health management in Zambia.
In Zambia, wow.
Yeah. So
okay,
I'm from
right.
Zambia. Okay, my question is, as new migrants, the skilled migrants, come to Germany to work, how many of them prefer to stay in Germany permanently, make Germany their home, or how many of them prefer to it's a circular migration? Germany is only one of their destinations. They continue move to other places.
Okay, so that's the permanence question. The gentleman in the back, and then Barry, and then Neil, and then Hiroki. Yeah.
My name is Andre. I'm a graduate student at Perkins.
Okay.
Although the theology thing was very interesting, the church thing, but my thought was actually, we mentioned Australia, Canada, the United States as being immigrant nations. I'm somewhat under the impression that the fact that language is a huge hurdle, especially because we have a humongous amount of wealth, of intellectual and cultural wealth in Germany. How far are the Germans willing to, because it's an expression of their culture, to open up, since German is a very difficult language, and that is a definite hurdle. I was just in contact last week with Heidelberg, for example, and they are starting a structured PhD, which is unheard of since 13. I don't know when they existed. 2014 was the first time that they're doing it, and it's a very, very traditional university. How far are they interested in saying, okay, we would even be willing to open up from a language point of view in order to have immigrants? Because there is this movement in regards to you have to learn German, you have to speak German at home, which is ridiculous because you can't really find out if you are and if you aren't. But still, so my question is language, immigration, and how is that welcoming?
So permanence, language. Barry, what's your question?
Yesterday on McQuestion, I had two of our friends, Pia Hieronymus and Richard Gump, talking about immigration. And one of the things that Pia, you've heard her before.
Well, not only have I heard her, I've written lots of things with her.
I know.
She's good.
One of the key aspects for a successful immigration policy is if you gear it to the long-term benefits of your country from an economic standpoint. So my question is, and please don't go to the U.S. Congress and ask for help. It would be the wrong place to go.
You'd be better off at the German Bundestag.
The question really is, has Germany accepted that in its long-term economic interests, it needs a rational immigration policy that looks at getting the type of people that will help the country grow and prosper?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how does Germany manage its immigration in the national interest? Neil?
Yeah, mine is a crazy kind of American Studies-ish kinds of question. You know, if you ask an American what he is or she is, they will tell you. There'll be a million different answers. Like asking a Catholic or a Jew what it means to be Catholic or Jewish. There's an answer to that. And I'm wondering what it means to be a German. And this is a riff off of the national identity question. You know, what does it mean to be French? What does it mean to be German? Because when I asked that question to graduate students 15 years ago in Berlin, they looked blank at me and said, "A German is a German." I'm serious. You know, it's that whole idea that, you know, the quality of being German is a genealogical question, you know, about your ancestry and so forth. And I couldn't get them to think about, you know, the cultural context and the meaning. And I was wondering if there is such a thing as a German national identity. If there is, I mean, if I were to ask you after this is over, what does it mean to be German? What would you say? What would someone in Germany say to a question like that?
Okay, that's a good one. What is a German? The national identity question. And final question we'll take from Hiroki, and then we'll wrap it up with the final round of answers. Hiroki, the Japanese finally weighing in.
Well, my question is how does this fit to politics of interest groups in Germany? And what kind of the groups are for immigration and pushing the phase 3 to 4 to 5, and then what groups are resisting to stop Germany at the phase 2 or 3? So that's my question.
Yeah, so a question about the politics of immigration in Germany. So you want to take all these questions and one brilliant answer and sort of rolling them all into one?
I try. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the questions. I start with this question of permanence of the immigration. In fact, many immigrants coming to Germany right now, staying in Germany for some years and then go further, for example, to the United States, etc. Again, the Siegerland, my new workplace, they have a huge lack of doctors in the hospitals, and they can't get doctors in Germany anymore, so they get them from Greece, from India, from everywhere, and their biggest problem is that they just stay 2 years and then go further. So I would say also immigration has become more circulatory. Thank you. And but there's this famous saying of Phil Martin: "There's nothing more permanent than a temporary migrant." And so we have to see it in the long run. But I would say the majority of the immigrants coming to Germany right now doesn't expect to stay there for...
But I think this is true in every country. I mean, in the U.S., the myth of the return. I mean, how many Irish came to New York and say, "Well, I'm going back in a couple of years," and of course, they never went back. So I think that often there's this myth of return. I mean, would that be accurate, Neil?
No, that's exactly right. Certain percentage do go back, but most of them stay.
Most of them end up staying, yeah. So the next question was
language. Yeah, this is a key issue, and I think it's it belongs to these questions and the new self-confidence or self-image of Germany, and it also includes the language. And I talked about the doctors in the Siegerland, and the question is, do we speak? There are many immigrant foreign doctors in Germany, and they can't really communicate with their patients. So they have big problems, and this is a big debate in Germany. But the politicians say, so we don't have other doctors, so we have to deal with it. And the patients have to accept this in the long run. They will go through some phases, but in the end they have to accept it. Also, Germany as a nation of immigrants, of course, this would mean that language has a different role in the future. And so there's English is very common in many parts of the economy, also maybe in the hospitals and so on. This belongs to the question, what is German or what is Germany stand for?
Everybody knows the quote from Ma Ferguson, right, in Texas, when they were debating English as the official language of Texas. This is in the 1920s, and she said, "If English was good enough for our Lord Jesus Christ, it's good enough for the people of the great state of Texas."
I mean this.
The Queen of Bribes.
This is a central question, and this brings this trouble and this struggle with the person also with identity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what is German? What is Germany? If you ask the young people, especially with a migration history, they would say, "I'm not a German. I'm a Berliner." For example. So there's this local identity, and this is quite strong. So they love Berlin. They love Frankfurt. They love Munster, but they wouldn't say I'm German. So German, Turkish, maybe, but there's this local identity with the young generation, and
But wouldn't that be traditionally German? I mean, the Germans always had a very local identity.
I mean, being a German or German identity has always been difficult for my generation and so on after World War II and the Nazi and so on. So this was never an easy question.
Yeah,
and
that's interesting.
Being proud, I'm proud of being a German. This was a very difficult sentence. For Germany, for which reasons? But it's maybe even more difficult for the young generation with migrant roots. So, but there's this tendency for local identity in Germany. So they love Kreuzberg or Prenzlauer Berg in Berlin. So this is their place to be.
Yeah, we have a good cook. Another one of my students and a mutual friend and colleague who now is working in, I think, the government of Westfalen, Nordrhein-Westfalen. And I remember he said, "I'm an Emslander."
Yeah.
Coming from the Emsland, which is a tiny little part of northwest Germany.
And the general idea of being a German after World War II is this expression of Verfassungspatriotismus. So maybe the German can have more.
It's constitutional patriotism. That's so. You could contrast this with the Volksgemeinschaft. You haven't said anything about the Volkisch idea, but that's presumably gone now. The Nazis destroyed it.
Constitutional patriotism.
It's an expression of Jürgen Habermas. So we are proud to live in a democracy with the constitutional law and so on, and this is something to be proud of, but not of being German as such.
Isn't that changing though? When you say this is changing, some people have said it has changed, like in the late 90s, sports, soccer, certainly helped, but the waving of the flags is now commonplace. Now it wasn't commonplace prior to 94 or something.
This is true. So this has changed, especially after the World Cup in Germany 2006, and then it became common to have a German flag in the garden and so on. So this was a taboo before. So
but wasn't it a taboo mostly for the Germans? But the ones that because I was there at that time when that transition I think was happening. For example, when Clinton came to Germany in 1999 or 1998 again, I was amazed that it was the first time I saw German flags. They just don't ever. You never see, and you never hear the national anthem. But then, you started to see at sports events that the people who were waving those flags tended to be German-born and raised Germans of other ancestors. And they didn't have any of the guilt. What do you call that in German? That Vergangenheitsbewältigung, or that? Do you know what I'm talking about? That it's the Holocaust thing. It's like that's not that doesn't define them, and so they can outwardly express their German patriotism as a land, as a nation, rather than feel that they've got to express their Germanness through Habermas's notion of kind of like the Americans who say we believe in the creed of constitutional law and all men are created equal and all of our founding documents kind of thing.
Let's finish with the question about the politics of immigration, because I know people have to leave. So can you wrap it up with this?
Yeah, I think the most important interest groups in Germany are parties. So, and we have this party competition in Germany, and these play a key role in politics in Germany. And the basic problem was that most of the immigrants were not allowed to vote. So and that's why we had these anti-immigration campaigns. For example, in North Rhine-Westphalia, Kinder statt Inder, it was just to win the elections in 2000. So that's was the only reason. So it didn't make any sense in demographic reasons and so on. It was bad for the image of Germany. But in the short run, they could use a winner election. So I think there are some parties who have interest in deprive the people, for example, of fears, spread of fears into the population. And as I said, so the strong pro-immigration power now in Germany is the economy. And the interest group of the economy, and there's a coalition between the big parties in Germany, CDU and SPD, and the economy to open up the country for immigration. And also, I think this was one question to have an immigration law, which organizes immigration on a different way.
A rational law.
Yeah, and so the Canadian point system is intensively discussed in Germany these days.
So you may be ahead of the U.S. and maybe even Canada. Okay, well, let's give him a hand. Thank all of you for coming. There may be something he wants to show, and we have a great program on Japan coming in a couple of weeks. Take one of the flyers and check it out. Okay, we have a gift here.
I have a small gift. Thank you once again for inviting me and having such a wonderful discussion, which was inspiring. And I have some special gifts.
Okay, what is in here?
This is a documentary of a Turkish-German soccer team in the Ruhr area, and it was in the movies last year, and it's made by one of my students. You met last time in Munster, so this is
Weltklasse, Kreisklasse. So it looks very interesting
and very German. And this is for your coffee break in the morning from my new institution. So
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hiroki, would you say Japan is doing